and welcome to SydneyAlt.net February. So sorry for the late start. We had some technical difficulties. Sorry to keep you waiting, but we are here now, and I think we can all hear each other and see each other. So say something in the chat if you're there. I can see Raymond's there, which is a good start. Anyone else in the chat? A few secs there. So it's not just Francis. You might see him on the right. He's actually got a live audience member with him to give him feedback as you go. Oh, look, there's George, right? That's good.
He sounds fine in my direction.
Alan, you want to say hello or anything, or you're staying in the background there?
Yeah, hello, yeah, say hello. Come to the phone and say hello. All right. Yeah.
Also, our long time.
I had one person turn up. Yeah, awesome. Yes.
Well, we got at least a few in the chat here. This looks hopeful.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm using this as a test run.
So to make up for the delay at the start, we have more things to give you. So that's always good, right? So
I think certainly for the people that turned out, I think the less is merry for these guys.
That's right. You've got more chance of winning the prizes if there's less people who didn't pay for the delay.
Yeah.
So we've got 2 programmable tickets to give away this month, and also 2 JetBrains licenses as usual. So listen up, stay to the end, and I'll ask you the questions. Now, as you might have read, we have Francis himself giving a presentation. As you know, we usually have 3 people in, so Alan is standing in for the 3rd person today, and Francis is presenting. So as you've probably read, he's going to do Permission Impossible, and he's got some pretty cool looking slides, which I'm looking forward to see how they're going to head. This is talk also for the Programmable conference. So if you've got any feedback, Francis, right? You want feedback so that you can work it in for the next coming of the talk. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So
as long as it's positive, that's the only thing. It has to be positive.
Please, as brutal and as negative or positive, or just be as honest as possible. I think that's what I'm looking for. So.
So hard to believe Francis looks a little bit shy, but we'll just have to put it on.
Just as a background, this is actually going to be my first conference talk. So I'm definitely going to be feeling very anxious about it, but at the same time, I've already kind of done some runs with it, and it's just look, I think for anyone talking in front of a crowd can be a little bit nerve-wracking. So I think the idea is just to ease into it. So I'm only human. I might make mistakes, but I don't really care at the end of the day. It's just the main thing is I'm standing in front of you guys and entertaining you and also educating you at the same time. That's the main thing.
All right, sounds very good. Well, you want to take it away, Francis? Permission Impossible.
Yeah.
I'll bring slides in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thanks everyone. I don't know I can't actually see the chat today, so I don't know how many people have actually turned up.
As usual. If you've got any questions, chuck them in as we go, and I'll surface them for Francis.
Normally, I think I wasn't planning to do that type of format. I was going to put all the questions in the end. I realized maybe because it's alt.net, maybe I'll change the format. Right. It's not working.
And we can't hear you, Francis, at the moment. Come in a bit closer.
Actually, okay. So can you hear me better?
Yeah, that's perfect now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So basically, so today, basically, I'm going to be talking about basically telling you a story about the real life project that I had to do, and basically this became inspiration for these. I begin.
Francis, you're going to have to stay closer. I think you dropped the voice. Sorry.
We'll probably try to sit down because the intention was I was originally going to do the standing up to simulate the presentation, but yeah, if that's going to be an issue, I'll just do this. Okay, so yeah, I just want to do an acknowledgement of country. So I want to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land that we work on every day. So I respect their elders, past and present, and all the Aboriginal people, especially those we kind of touch base as part of our day-to-day work. So yeah, just kind of just shameless self-plug or introduction about myself. I think you guys know me pretty well. So I'm also co-organize a meetup group called DDDU, which I officially going to start as of July this year. But yeah, don't worry, guys. I made sure that taking on that responsibility isn't going to affect my responsibility with Off.net. And my loyalty is Off.net first. So yeah, don't worry about it. don't. I've already obviously shared this with James as well. So yeah, I've been in the industry for about 30 years, and my first computer, it was an Apple II. So I know in programmable they're advertising me as a big Apple fanboy, but I'm actually doing this presentation on a fake Apple. It's got like a big Apple kind of sticker on the back. It's actually an Asus. So I want to ask you the question: am I a real Apple fanboy or not? So yeah. So yeah, you can kind of decide that for yourself. So if you've been in the industry as long as I have, so all your stories kind of start with once upon a time. So once upon a time, I worked as a principal engineer at FreshBooks in Amsterdam, and for all of you who don't know what FreshBooks is, it's basically this accounting platform based in North America, and that's where most of their users are. And they have about 1 million plus users worldwide. So yeah, so like the theme of the talk, I was given a impossible mission to do, and it was to introduce a new user class called the firm accountant. And you might be wondering, what's so impossible about introducing a new user class? How hard can that be? And also, what in the world is a firm accountant? So it's certainly not this handsome accountant with a firm rifle grip. That's not what a firm accountant is. It's kind of more like this guy with a firm accountant looks. Yeah, I know the world can be cruel sometimes. So I want to apologize to any real accountants out there in the room. Yeah, I'll take all the beatings in the corner after the talk if you want. So yeah, apologies again. Okay, so I did kind of like an analysis of what introducing a firm accountant would kind of look like. So I found 933 potential places where I might have to do code changes, and this is spanning across like 6 different systems. I was just given one Inter developer as a resource, and this is a kicker. I wasn't allowed to touch code. And that necessarily might not be a bad thing if you've done any of my code reviews of late. But jokes aside, I also had 2 months to deliver. So actually making the code changes wasn't the biggest challenge. But if you're making so many code changes across pretty much every nook and cranny of the system, how are you going to test all your changes, right? That was going to be one big headache. So you can imagine, I was like this when I first heard the kind of like, what I had to do and what sort of the resources I was given. to do with. So basically, that's how I came up with a talk of, I guess, the title of the talk today. And just to kind of fast forward roughly for about 2.5 months, I guess, after I got that project memo. So like most IT projects, this one was a bit late, but half a month isn't too bad. So basically, that 2 months, and I spent a lot of it in Zoom meetings, basically begging for more resources, begging for kind of more help from other teams, and basically, I didn't get any extra developers, but what I did get was I was able to offload some of the work, especially in the kind of like the testing side of it, because that was the part that I had a lot less confidence in kind of doing it right. So, and I also kind of threatened and said, look, do you really want me to like go and touch this critical infrastructure, not knowing what I'm really doing? And do you also expect me to like, test all these things and kind of, you kind of trust me? It was kind of what I was kind of implying. So yeah, so I actually did deliver the project, and I actually didn't break production, as a lot of the bookies predicted. I think Las Vegas is still pissed off that they lost a lot of money over that one. But yeah, so I got a chance to kind of lie down and kind of reflect upon what happened on the project and what I really should have done. And I think on reflection, what I really should have done was actually jump out of the building and ran for my life in the other direction. Like basically the stress of delivering this project was really intense, and like FreshBooks had all these new features on their roadmap that would require more new user classes, and I was pretty sure this exercise was going to be repeated. Hey Francis, we need a soft accounting user class. Do you want to implement it for us again? So that was sort of like the nightmare scenario I was kind of fearing. So, and I guess the kind of the fear of going soft got me kind of acting, and that's going to be the basis for the next segment of my talk. So, and yeah, that's the conclusion of the part one of my talk. I don't presume anyone's got questions so far.
I got a question for you, Francis.
Yeah, go on.
Why didn't they let you code?
Because I'm a principal engineer, and they said it was
Below you to code.
They said it was too expensive with a company for me to be like going low level and touching code. Was the official answer. I can see where they were coming from, but yeah, obviously if they only give you one intern developer, like come on, But anyways, I digress. So yeah, let's take a kind of deeper dive into kind of what I found trying to kind of mitigate this situation I found myself in. So yeah, just quickly, let's just go through the agenda for the next part of the talk. So obviously, as the my title of the talk implies, I'm going to be talking about permissions, and I just want to also do a quick intro about authentication versus authorization, because it's a topic that kind of comes up and when you talk about permissions, and normally people kind of confuse the two sometimes. I'll also talk about the different access control models. I'll go through some code examples as well, and I'll do some maybe some Q&A at the end if I haven't bored everyone to death by then. So yeah, authentication and authorization. So Yeah. So basically, I think when you're talking about application security and permissions, what you're really talking about is, there's an authentication side to it, but there's also the authorization side to it. So, as I was saying before, sometimes those two things get kind of mixed up. So, yeah, authentication is basically, are you who you say you are? And basically, that's what it is in a nutshell. And so, imagine like having Ethan Hunt as a user, for example. It would be quite a nightmare to kind of authenticate, I would think. And authorization is, as user X, it's basically you're asking, what is this person allowed to do? But also there's a more important question of what this person isn't allowed to do as well. So yeah, that's what authorization is in a nutshell. And you might have guessed, today I'm just going to be concentrating on the authorization portion of it rather than the authentication portion. I mean, like either topic, you could probably spend hours talking about it. But yeah, today we're just going to just talk about authorization only. So before we get into deeper, I just quickly wanted to paint a picture of like how authorization worked at FreshBooks. Now, I think maybe the picture's a little bit blurry, and I know there's like, this is like a C4 diagram, and there's all these interactions going on. I don't want you to like concentrate on anything or even like what the systems are. But if you kind of look at this diagram, you can see everything is kind of talking to the system in the middle, right? And there's this system called basically masterlog in FreshBooks. And that's basically the authentication and authorization system. And see all the blue systems you see around masterlog? They were like one of the 6 systems that I had to go in and change permissions. So you can see like everything is dependent on masterlog. Okay, so just we're all engineers, so we love a kind of bit of a being lawyers and other people tech stack. So at FreshBooks, they kind of had a kind of like an Express.js UI that was slowly being upgraded to React. They had fully like a Python backend. But interestingly, the masterlog was built on Ruby on Rails. So so they used these 2 open source projects called Device for authentication and Pundit for authorization. If anyone is a Ruby on Rails developer and they're interested in that. So just to give you an idea, like 50 milliseconds is kind of like the industry expected norm for like an authorization call. FreshBooks had to basically increase Datadog budget from 250 to 600 milliseconds, which means some of our authorization calls were taking up to 600 milliseconds. So you can imagine, increased authorization calls are going to really negatively impact all your user experience, and also a bit of a decentralized mess. So basically, you had masterlog had all kind of like the data associated with your authorization, but a lot of the logic was actually kind of stored locally with each application. So it was kind of like decentralized, and that was also a cause of our issues at FreshBooks. So this is just a quick snippet of one of the 933 places I had to kind of change. So typically, you would have in the top example, some sort of API call, like a REST call, saying, oh, I want to put something in, for this particular thing. And first thing you do is you're going to check to see whether you have permissions to do an update, for example. And what would happen is that check to see whether you belong in a particular role to be able to perform that particular action actually set in with the like a business object, which is kind of like set with the application. So just to give you like a visual kind of code example, so what would happen is like an application would make an authorization call to master lock, and the authentication portion of it will do an authentication check first. And once you pass it, it will then go off to the authorization portion within master lock to kind of get like, in this case, kind of like a group membership information. And then that will get passed back to the application. And remember, in the code example, that was doing the membership check, and that was actually happening in the code in the actual business object as well. So, and you probably have seen this type of pattern before. You know, we're kind of using roles to do permissions, and it's kind of called role-based security or role-based access control. And everyone's definitely probably have implemented or modified this type of access control code before, I imagine. So, you know, what are the pros and cons with using something like RBAC or role-based access control? So, you know, as that code sample kind of alluded, it's pretty simple. It's pretty easy to implement. It's great for small to medium apps. And just to give you a historical background, FreshBooks started off as a very simple invoicing kind of software that kind of grew into this huge accounting platform. So I can imagine, you know, it was great for them when they were like a small invoicing application. And, you know, it's also really good if you've got like a permission set that doesn't change. So just to give you another background, was when the firm accountant was kind of introduced, I believe that was the first time in over 5 years that they actually had introduced a new user class as well. So I think that kind of exacerbated some of the issues that I saw when I was implementing that project. So what are the cons, you might ask? You probably know a lot of the cons because I've been talking about it in the last 20 minutes or so. So it's not very scalable for like enterprise or kind of SaaS applications. As you know, it's very difficult to introduce or change kind of new permissions. It's also very hard to do like anything other than kind of simple, low granular permissions. So maybe you might have done it yourself where, you know, you're trying to introduce new type of permissions, and the only way you can do it is you're going to have to like create a new type of role just to do a particular type of permission. And you can imagine, like, you know, you're just introducing new permissions as new roles, and there's something called like you can get into a scenario where you have this like explosion of roles within your system, and you have so many roles that people don't even understand what 90% of the roles do. And I've certainly worked with applications like that in the past. And, you know, in our example, you can also see kind of like the tight coupling, you know, that was happening between data and the actual application code as well. So the big question is, are there any alternatives out there? And of course there is, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this talk today. So I found something called attribute-based access control, or ABAC. So just, you know, in a nutshell, it's it's a different way of doing access control, and, you know, you're kind of using attributes across 4 areas: subject, resource, action, environment, and you're also using something called policies on top of that as well. So just to, I think it's best explained over like a diagram. So a typical ABAC system would look something like this. So basically, you know, you might have a news over there. So that basically, you know, it might have attributes like, you know, what kind of type of paying customer they are, you know, what, that's a bit ageist to age in there, but, you know, and then, you know, there might be a resource. Normally a user would interact with the resource as well. So maybe there's the name, the dates, the sizes, blah blah blah. And normally, if there's a user and a resource, there's going to be some sort of action between the two. So you can like you can kind of define the different type of actions that a user can kind of perform certain actions on resources.
And you've got a blur filter so they can't see.
Sorry?
You have a blur filter. They can't see the screen.
Oh, do I? Oh, damn. Okay, rookie mistake. Let me just okay. I think they probably can't see it. Anyway, I think they're seeing the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. Okay, sorry. Anyways, and there's also like an environment. Obviously, all these kind of users, resources, and action, they all happen inside an environment. So you can kind of specify the different attributes that might have a say in the outcome of whether something is authorized or not. And then on top of that, you can also define policies. So this could be like corporate policies, compliance policies, security policies, or whatever policy you can define on top of that. And all of that gets kind of like fed into the authorization engine that kind of says, okay, this is allowed or this isn't allowed. So it looks pretty promising, Okay, so ABAC, what are the pros? So you can kind of see already that it allows for like a lot more complicated, granular permissions, but also quite flexible as well. So it's certainly more scalable than RBAC, the base security that we saw before. Obviously it has an entire section for policies. So you're going to get potentially better security and compliance, and it's also centralized. So it all sounds good, but everything in IT has a trade-off. So cons, what are the cons? It's obviously a lot more complex, as you can imagine, and because there's all these things feeding into the kind of decision, you can imagine there could be some potentially latency issues. And lastly, ABAC also uses a lot of ABAC systems, I think, uses something called the Extensible Access Control Markup Language. And it's basically a form of XML. And just to give you an idea of what it looks like, this is a typical XHTML policy that I found on the internet. I'm not going to actually go through it because I don't you can imagine this is pretty hard to understand, and I don't think any developers would want to work with this. So this is so trying to sell this to developers is basically like you making as a general manager making the most lopsided trading history. And you're trying to justify that to a very angry fan base of customers. So I don't know if there's any. I don't know if there's any NBA fans out there in off.net. But if you are a Mavericks or a Bunches fan, my heart's bleeding for you guys. So I quickly realized maybe ABAC might not be the way because because of the XHTML requirement, and maybe it just seemed like it could be too complex for FreshBooks. Then I came across something called Google Zanzibar. So you might think, what is Zanzibar? And no, it's not the famous salad bar in the Stuff restaurants. Oh, definitely not. But what it is it's basically their internal access control system for all their Google services. So, and I'm talking about both internal and external. So, this is Google Calendar, this is Google Cloud, the Drive, the Maps, Google Maps, Photos, YouTube, everything, So, and again, this is quite gigantic, right? The performance is pretty outstanding. Like they claim to have 95th percentile latency of less than 10 milliseconds. Remember I said like 50 millisecond was kind of the industry norm. So they're doing it 5 times under that, and they have availability of 3 nines, 99.9999% over 3 years, which is also quite phenomenal. But these guys are Google, right? So just to dive a bit deeper, so they kind of they're doing access control kind of via something called relation tuples, which I will get into a bit later. But they've got about 2 trillion of them that occupy close to 100 terabytes. On average, they claim to do more than 10 million queries per second, which is also like staggering numbers. Apparently, they do all of this only across 10,000 servers organized in several dozen clusters. So again, this is also very impressive as well. And all these numbers we're talking about, these are like planet scale numbers, really. So when someone mentions the word planet scale, you need to be very, very, very wary and very, very careful, because this is your net. It's very, very tiny, and in a big tech, they have like Zanzibar needs, right? So you guys, there's like basically night and day in terms of what you need and also the systems they use. So yeah, don't all rush into Google Zanzibar yet, but I'm sure there's been a few people here who's been burnt by Kubernetes and microservices, right? So don't let Zanzibar be your next Kubernetes. I'm just joking, but so. Again, I just want to re-emphasize that, like, if this is your use case, like if it's simple, if it's easy to implement, you've got small, medium apps, if you've got like a well-defined permission set, it doesn't change. Please continue using role-based security, because like you don't need to add all this complexity and like cost and layers on into your small, medium application you're building. So so let's dive a bit deeper into Google Zanzibar. So I think I alluded before that it uses something called relation tuples. So it's basically using relationships to do access control. So again, I think a diagram is probably maybe the best way to illustrate this. So basically, you are basically defining like everything as a relationship. So this is like a Google Drive example where like you have a user called Bob, and this kind of is mapping out all the relationships between all these files, and you can see it's pretty straightforward. It's kind of like a graph kind of scenario with all these tuples kind of like defining different components within the graph. So just from a conceptual viewpoint, you can think of like maybe ABAC that can do everything, and then like REBAC or relationships based access control can do a lot of what ABAC can do. And you have at the bottom like role-based security, and also you can I think this also diagram also kind of implies that if you really wanted to, you can do role-based security using like an ABAC system, and you can certainly do like role-based security using a REBAC system as well. So I just wanted to show you this concept. Because this also kind of alludes to like what type of systems you can use to perhaps like kind of like change your kind of like how you model your access control systems in the future if you decide to go down a certain route. So what are the pros with REBAC? So it's pretty similar to ABAC. It allows you to do flexible permissions. It's also scalable as well. And as you kind of seen earlier, it can be a bit more visual and graphical because of the kind of graph nature. And it's also centralized. So, it shares a lot of the attributes with ABAC. And similarly, I think it also shares some of the cons with ABAC. So, I think, again, complexity comes into mind. There's also a learning curve. If you're not familiar with graphs and so on, it's something that you're going to have to get used to. Obviously, in that it's not going to be as granular as ABAC. And auditing could potentially be challenging as well. So, because Google Zanzibar is actually not an open source project, so you can't just go into GitHub and download the latest version of Google Zanzibar. But as I was telling you before, I think they did release a white paper on it, and a lot of the stats I showed you earlier was actually taken straight from their white paper. So when that white paper got released, a lot of people rushed off to build their own kind of solutions out there. So you've got all these open source solutions, as well as there's a couple of commercial solutions out there. And today I'm going to demo like how Google Zanzibar might look like, and I'm going to use a system called Topaz. So yeah, the reason I picked Topaz was obviously it's open source. When I say open source, obviously there's an open source component, and there's obviously also a paid component to it. But interestingly, it supports something called the Open Policy Agent, and it's basically a CNCF project that provides a way to write. Remember in ABAC, I was telling you about policies, but it lets you write that declaratively, like basically as code. So imagine think of it as like Terraform, but for policies. And, and it also fully supports Google Zanzibar as well. But it also allows you to use RBAC, ABAC, and REBAC. So all the different type of access control systems that I showed you, it allows you to do that. And so I'll just give you a quick rundown of how Topaz works. And okay, so you might think this kind of looks similar to how that ABAC kind of diagram worked. Yeah, and you'll be not wrong. The difference is, I guess, just remember, Topaz only does authorization. So you still have to provide like the authentication information to it. So if you see on the top, basically left, it doesn't matter. I think it supports a lot of different identity providers. So it has to provide certain type of authentication information, and that has to flow into their decision engine. And remember, like in the ABAC example, you're using all these attributes, and you have also, across like users, resources, environment, and so on, and you have also policies. In Topaz, everything's just a policy now, and you're just feeding that into their decision engine. And basically, like the decision engine will basically will let you know whether something's allowed or not. And interestingly, with Topaz as well, what it will also stream out is all the decisions it's made into SIEM tools. So SIEM tools are like security information and event management tools. So normally it just gives organizations a kind of real-time view of what's happening with like all, kind of on the authorization layer, but you can also, for example, use this to perhaps like spot like security incidents as well, as an example. So so I mentioned earlier, everything's done as policies in Topaz. So this is like a typical, like a role-based access control example. It's pretty simple, it's not the horrific XML that I showed you earlier. it's in the JSON. I mean, you can kind of like this policy basically is telling that, look, if this user is in a user group or role called viewer, then you can see this particular tenant's information. So that's what this kind of policy is saying. So interestingly, they use the same structure, and you can also do reback as well. So the difference between this and that is in the relationship field, instead of kind of specifying like whether something is in a role, you can kind of specify the actual relation. So in this particular example, this is saying, look, does this user have these can read relation with this particular document, and if so, like allow this person to read that document. It's again very straightforward as well. And interestingly, Topaz also allows you to do ABAC. So basically, this is a policy. This is basically like a work policy to check whether is this person in sales, and then whether it's during working hours. If so, yeah, allow this person to access whatever resource it's checking for. So you can see, I'm able to do like all these different types of permission models now. I'm just using the same system, and I can kind of like grow my access control architecture as my application evolves. So you might think, okay, how does this all work in code? So this is so I basically Topaz has all these different code examples, but I've actually picked ASP.NET Core, not because we're Auth.NET, but it's because actually it's the most simplest one. So in this particular example, if you wanted to use Topaz with ASP.NET Core, it's basically 5 lines of code. So you've got like in your startup.cs, you basically say, look, I want to use basically Topaz. So you have you basically saying, I want to use their libraries and their policies. And you're basically telling ASP.NET Core to actually use their authorization engine, and you're also telling them where to actually find the policies. And then basically, throughout your API endpoints, just at each endpoint, you basically have to tell the endpoint, look, can you use Acerto's or Topaz's authorization engine instead? And that's basically it. And you can imagine, I could be introducing a new firm accountant, soft accountant, like medium firm accountant, whatever new accountant like I'm adding, I don't have to change my code anymore. I can just all do it as policies. It just becomes completely data centric and I wouldn't never have to change another line of code again. So yeah, just going back to my the vision I had for FreshBooks that was never implemented. So I had this idea of basically implementing something like Topaz, and you put an API gateway at the front, and you basically, it's like a canary, so you slowly introduce Topaz into your kind of systems, and you kind of slowly obsolete away Masterlog. So I just want to do some acknowledgements for all the people that have helped me to do this talk. So first of all, Ben Robinson, who is the actual intern developer. I think he somehow survived the trauma of implementing the firm accountant, and he's now a fully fledged full stack Ruby, TypeScript, Python developer, and I'm very proud of what this guy's achieved. I also want to thank Chris Simon, who's actually also might be familiar, some of you regulars here. He's actually been my mentor for this particular talk, so I want to also thank him for all the efforts he put in. But lastly, a huge thanks to George Jayaratnam. He's actually had to sit through a couple of iterations of this talk. So yeah, big shout out to you, George. So yeah, this is the Q&A section of my
I think we got time, Francis, if you want to open the floor for questions.
Yeah, definitely. I can't actually see the. I got too many. I don't have enough screens. I've got 2 screens here, and I kind of wish I had a 3rd screen.
Any questions, anyone? I'm watching.
More importantly, feedback, please. Positive and negative. Anything I need to. Yeah. Anything I need to work on, like anything small. The smaller, the better. Everything counts.
So you got a question from C# FT. Does Topaz support more complex OR scenarios like impersonation?
So that is more an authentication question, I believe. So I'm not sure. That sounds to me like more of an authentication question. And I think Topaz is fully authorization. But I'm not saying other systems might do both, but I was only looking at Topaz, and Topaz is only doing authorization. So yeah, the question is, and I don't know if that applies to Topaz particularly.
No worries. Luke says that he implemented OPA, but yes, he says that writing Rego is better than XML.
Okay, was that a question, or was that just a?
It was really more of a statement.
Okay, yeah. I can't actually see. I don't know if it's surfacing the.
Yeah, that's right. That's you got everything so far. Any more thoughts or comments or questions? All right. So what happened in the end, Francis? Did you add the extra role in manually, or did you end up implementing one of these providers, or how did it go?
No. So obviously, the whole thing about this was everything was done manually. There was this massive weeks and weeks of end-to-end testing. I'm in all these Zoom meetings. And what I could probably do an entire talk about all the things that went wrong, just doing this project. that's a talk in itself. Poor Ben had spent 3 weeks going through because I told you it hadn't been done in 5 years, and there was this he ran into some really weird dependency chain thing that took him 3 weeks to figure out, and he had help from lots of different people, and just some crazy stuff happened. So it's definitely not a fun project to kind of work on, where anything that involves where oh my god, if it's touching every part of all your entire system, and I'm talking this is a SaaS platform, right? That's pretty scary.
So you got a question from George. So
good point. Thank you, Luke.
Yeah. Can you see the question?
That's right.
How the policies?
I think I was thinking 5 nights, but I said 3 nights. Yeah.
You see George's question about how you write the policies?
For what? For Topaz? So these are all policies. This is a policy. All the examples I showed you was a type of policy and then if you go back, you can see it's just policies. It's only inputting policies as well. So it's pretty simple. right? It's very simplistic, like it's very simple kind of design. Okay, yeah. So this is a policy. This is a policy. Like this is a policy, and I guess the thing about this is like it's all encapsulated as something very simple. But like with the code, you're writing it in such a, it's so generic that like the main thing is you implement the code once, and you can see like the code doesn't need to change almost ever. That's the beauty of this particular example. Now, just to also give you just a quick background, so like the reason why I picked ASP.NET Core was like if I picked Python or JavaScript or whatever, like the stuff you see on the left, just that becomes like streams of code, because a lot of those codes don't have like good middleware kind of frameworks such as ASP.NET Core, and you just this is actually a really beautiful example of like how much you get like in something like ASP.NET Core in terms of middleware for free. Like that 2 lines you see at the top of that, you're gonna have you're gonna have to write it yourself, and that's like that's probably too complex to go through in a short talk like this.
You had a couple more questions, Francis, from C# of T. So he is asking about differences between the Zanzibar implementations. So permit IO.
Oh yeah, there will definitely be differences. Like some of them might only support like RBAC and REBAC. They won't support ABAC. Some of them might support all 3. And then the way they do it will be like I said, this is just just a white paper, and it's not like they even wrote, oh yeah, this is a standard you have to follow Zanzibar. There's no such thing as a Zanzibar standard, right? This is they just wrote a paper saying this is how we achieve this, and everyone's gone off and done their own implementation. So I think that there probably is, but it's probably too short of a time. Like to kind of I think I imagine like all I don't know if all the solutions would provide visualization tools. I think I have definitely seen some of them.
All right. So any more questions for Francis, or should we go for questions for the audience? Throw in your last questions now. So I might close the window. I got kookaburras laughing at the presentation. Here we go. Press that up. You can't see, but I had an open window here. All right.
Okay.
Maybe we'll go to questions for the audience. And thank you, Francis, for sharing your talk and your pain and learnings doing all this Auth Z.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the people who turned up today to kind of sit through this. I hope you kind of understood what I was trying to present. And look, feel free to like reach out to me at any point on LinkedIn. Any questions? Definitely, I'll try my best to answer it. Oh, and lastly, there are these references which I can post on the Meetup page.
Yeah, you probably put them as a comment. Be the best.
Yeah, I can do that. Definitely.
All right, hide the slide because otherwise it might give away too many answers for the questions. That's.
Oh yeah, and basically just to conclude, like there are solutions out there, so it's no need to jump out of the piece. Okay, so.
So I'll give you first question for a ticket to Programmable. And this is, I think you can have it in Sydney or Melbourne if you happen to be in Melbourne, but you need to get the question right. So easy question first. What's the difference between authorization and authentication? First answer in the chat gets a license.
Oh, Luke, I feel your pain. maybe a bit more. But yeah, like if anyone's like in real life going through like this type of scenarios and would love some advice, and I'm here for you guys.
Wow, come on, someone should know the difference between authentication and authorization. It wasn't covered, it was at the start of France's talk. Or does no one want to go to program or?
Oh, I think maybe Luke might have gotten it.
Sounds good. Which one are you saying is which, Luke? Wow, we're starting to get answers coming through. All right, I think we have to give that one to George because he's given which one is which as the first one. Francis, you happy to give that one to George?
Well, are we allowed to give it to George?
Otherwise,
I would have to give it to Prasad, to be honest, because I think, I think he was the best person that kind of answered it. Like,
all right.
Exactly. I think what he's trying to express is basically, it's the same thing. So,
well, we do actually have 4 things to give away, so
yeah, we've got plenty of stuff to give away. Right. Don't worry, if you missed out, you get another chance.
You get another chance, yes. All right, so we give Prasad. You want the programmable one? So send me so Prasad, for the first one, yes, send me a meetup message. I don't think I have your email, so send me a meetup message with your email address, and then I'll put you in touch with the programmable organizers.
All right. Yeah, congrats, Prasad.
That's very good. All right, so now listen up because we still have one more programmable ticket. So the next question is, what are 2 cons of role-based access control? You already got a ticket, George. There you go.
Well, he was being my guinea pig. I had to give it.
You have to give him a ticket. Well deserved, I think. So 2 drawbacks of role-based access control for the next license.
Think of some of the pain points on it. Yeah. And David Whiteshot's got one answer out. So it's whoever gets 2 answers out first, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe another one. I think. Another. Maybe I need another answer for the second one. David Whiteshot. I'm not saying.
What do you think of Luke's answer, Francis?
Yeah. I don't know about not auditable, but not scalable and not defined. Yeah, I think. Yeah. It's like David White's I think those are not exactly things I talked about. I think certainly they're kind of right, but probably have to give it to Luke.
All right, so Luke, send me your email address and a meetup message, and I'll put you in touch to get the free ticket for Programmable. And let me know if it's Sydney or Melbourne that you want. Otherwise, I'll just assume Sydney. Since we are SydneyAlt.net, though, Francis, you're in Melbourne right at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah. So here's a funny story, guys. So I came here for DDD, which is like a software conference in Melbourne. I managed to catch gastroenteritis like the night before. So on Saturday morning, it's like throwing up. I'm like trying to make myself, well enough to go to the actual conference. I even convinced Alon who's our regular from the Melbourne side, to come. And I basically lasted 2 talks, and I had to retire. And I'm feeling really bad about that more than me missing out on DDD myself. So I'm gonna take him out for dinner tonight.
Sounds good. So we got 2 more. Yeah, Francis is now well, as you can see. And we'll be
coming. Well, it could all go pear-shaped later tonight. Who knows?
Hope not. All right. So last 2 questions. Each question for a.
Wait. We might have to do the question again because
no, it's all right. I haven't done it yet. You ready?
Yeah. He said he's has to return the ticket already. That's how well my talk is going. But yeah.
No, you won't be able to make it. Well, do you want a JetBrains license instead, Prasad?
Yeah, we can give you a JetBrains license if you want, Prasad.
And we'll give away another programmable one instead.
Yeah, we'll have to do another quiz. Okay.
All right. So you'll send me your email address, but don't worry, saying if you're in Sydney or Melbourne. All right. So now for another programmable license. Amazing. All right. So tell me, what is Google Zanzibar? What is Google Zanzibar? Is it like a piece of software? Is it a piece of middleware? What is it?
I think it's a wine bar, isn't it?
A type of bar
it's
with lots of Zanzibar. Yes.
Actually, I've been to a few bars called Zanzibar. No,
well, it's also a place as well that doesn't exist, but that's probably not the right answer. George doesn't need a ticket.
I said it wasn't in the talk. Yeah. You've seen my talk a few times, George. You still get this wrong.
Let's put our faces a bit bigger. All right. Any answers on what is Google Zanzibar? If it's not a salad bar and it's not a wine bar and it's not a place, what could it be? No one wants a JetBrains license. No, this is for programmable, right? Yeah, this is still for a programmable. Yeah. All right. Hey, we got 2 answers. Maybe we've just got a delay in the chat today. What do you think, Francis? Has Baby White Shark got?
What I can see is like a Baby Shark.
Say again, Francis.
like Baby Shark, Baby White Shark's got it.
All right, Baby Shark, you got your license. I mean, your conference ticket. So yes, send me your email address, and I'll hook you up with the conference organizers and say which country which city. It's been a long day. Sorry, which city you'd like to go to. And last question. Hooray! And I'll see you if you're in Sydney too, which would be cool. Because I'll come along, and Francis will obviously see you because he'll be there presenting.
Yeah, and please say hello to me. I mean, it's not an obligatory, like it's not.
I think Raymond won the ticket last, like when we gave the last lot of tickets away, so he'll be there too.
Okay, yeah. Say hello. I won't bite.
Yeah,
you Baby White Shark might.
Baby White Shark might bite. Yes. So back to the last question. So what is Topaz? So this is for a JetBrains license. What is Topaz? And we don't want the story about what sort of gem it is.
I think that's the name of another bar. I think I'm sure bar Topaz. Oh, and actually, people can tell me what jokes worked and didn't work, and that would be good too.
George, what do you think? Is that good enough for an answer, Francis? I mean, for a JetBrains license?
Yeah, I would say so.
All right, so George, George has got an unfair advantage having watched the talk 3 times, but I suppose he deserves a license for sitting through it 3 times as well. All right, well, that's all we've... Oh, well, no, George wants to give it to C# with T. Have you still got enough licenses, George?
I think you just get them by default on the list at some point. Just accumulate that.
All right. So we'll have to give it to C# of T then, who also has some licenses, but maybe needs a new one. All right. So C#, send me your email address. I'm sure I've got it somewhere, but just send me a meetup message so that I don't forget, and so I definitely get it to the right person. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming, and sorry for the delays at the start. And I must say, I like how everyone's so kind to each other, sharing the licenses and tickets. That's awesome.
I know.
So, if anyone wants to give a talk, please send us a message and we can talk about it. We're looking for a speaker for next month. We've got Richard Banks of our old co-organizer of many years is coming back to talk about being an engineering manager and how you become one, and maybe some stuff about teams as well. Not the software, like the real teams, for April. But we don't have a speaker for March yet. So if there's something that you'd like to talk about, then please let us know, and we'll get you on and you can have a go. As you can see, it's not too scary. Everyone's pretty friendly, especially friendly in the chat today even. So good night and see you later, everyone.